This is Dr. David Allen. I'm with Flavia D'Allesandro, and she's discussing traumatization and how it relates to events we go through in our lives. In the last two segments, she talked about flashbacks, nightmares, withdrawal, phobias, and what have you. And now we're going to talk about arousal. How does arousal take place in a traumatization?
I'm glad we talk about it because I think it's the less known effect of PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. What happens is that people are always in a state of arousal. They are startled very easily. So they get scared very easily, and they have very impulsive actions.
People who are traumatized are startled easily.
Yes.
That's how you can tell they're traumatized?
This is one of the signs.
Okay.
This is one of the signs, and they're
heightened.
They're heightened, yeah.
Waiting for something, or they may have a sense of impending doom, or
exactly.
They're always on defense.
Yeah. Remember what I said? If you're really traumatized, your fear really never goes down to how it should be, the baseline. So you're always living on edge. So you become very irritable because it takes a lot of energy. It's exhausting to live like that. It's exhausting.
Flavia,
if I arrived here, I would be already saying, where's the exit? And I would be paying attention to whatever you do and everybody else does. If I have PTSD, I knew exactly how to get out of this immediately. You're always in a state of hyperarousal. And if anything, any sound, any smell, anything triggers me, I would react without thinking.
So you can't relax then?
You can't relax. You are exhausted. One of the things people say, they say, I'm exhausted. Also because they sleep very badly. It affects your whole life. Your thought becomes very negative because you cannot trust anymore. You don't feel safe. Imagine the thoughts. I can't trust you. He can attack me. This can happen. A fire, something. So can you imagine living like that? It's exhausting. So you're on edge, and as a little thing can just give a big reaction. And it's so quickly, the less you're aware of what's going with you, the more danger it is, because the reaction will be immediate. You're not going to think. You're just almost like functioning almost as an instinctual level where you're going to fly, fight, or freeze. You're functioning. What happened is your brain start working differently. After you have trauma, we know that the brain just doesn't go back to how it was supposed to normally function in a safe environment. It's not safe anymore. So how do you think you can relax and just sleep? And unfortunately, we know that sleeping is one of the things that heals trauma. Be able to sleep afterwards. And this is, you cannot even do it anymore because you're going to have nightmares.
It's a serious problem.
It's very serious. And, from direct experience, what's happening with people that are traumatized in our midst, right? We think they are rude, misbehaved, they're not disciplined enough, so we need to get rougher with them. But what people don't realize that maybe you're dealing with a traumatized person.
Wow. That is so important because we've heard about the soldiers coming back from the war being traumatized. But if you think about in our country where little kids are growing up in homes where some of them have watched their parents get killed, some of them have been shot themselves, some of them see their neighbors being killed. So really it's like we could have a PTSD or a traumatization problem in our little kids who are growing up.
Yes.
So how do we deal with that, Flavia?
First, who is talking about it? We are not talking about it. We are not recognizing the size of the problem. Right?
So we're denying the problem.
I think people don't really understand how trauma works. I think, especially with young children, there is the idea that, they don't know what happened because they are not talking about it. So they didn't really see it, so they are okay. But children and teenagers, they react differently than adults.
So how does a young child show traumatization?
Well, she's going to regress. So if she was potty trained, she's going to wet the bed again. If she was speaking, she was going to speak less. going to be a little afraid of things the child wasn't afraid before. The other thing, it will be less inclined to learn, because to be able to learn, you have to have some way of being in peace to be able to just concentrate and learn and be curious. The child will not stand still. The way the child play is going to change. They can reenact the event many, many times. I talk to teachers, and they tell me how the children are playing sometimes. And they see the traumatization in the schools in the way they're playing.
That's very serious. Because if a kid is traumatized, I mean, he's going to grow up into a traumatized adult.
It is, and if you can imagine that an adult has sometimes not the resources necessary to heal from a trauma, a child will have less resources in that sense, because they don't have the language that developed. There's a lot of things they don't understand. Why it happened? Can it happen again? Just the example of the hurricane, they're asking, so it's going to be a wave? Are they going to destroy us? Are we going to get killed? Like, even if adults are afraid, imagine the children. If the children see that the adults are losing it by fear, how do you think the children will feel it, right? They're not going to be able to cope with it. You can ask teachers, and they will tell you what's going on in the schools, how the children sometimes see sexual assault and sexual abuse in the homes, and they're replaying it in the school. And it's something that needs to be understood in a different light. Not only, the parents are not being able to do enough. No, it goes deeper than that. The children are traumatized, and they can't learn properly.
So you're saying this could affect our educational system?
Yes, I think it's one of the first to be affected is educational system, and then our health system. How much medication can you give to people for pain? People have pain here, I have pain here, I have pain there. They don't understand. They go to the hospital, they go to the emergency. How much are we spending money with this? And also the coping mechanisms for trauma, right? How do you cope with trauma? If you don't know what's going on and you're afraid, what do people do? The coping mechanism can be destructive, so it puts even a more of a strain in the public health system, right?
Wow. You know, it's so powerful, Flavia, because, you know, one of our family groups, a lady was held up in our home a couple of years ago, came home and found a man with a big knife threatening to kill her. And literally, as time went on, she almost became crippled. She couldn't walk. And she even demonstrated how she couldn't walk. And coming to the family group where she was able to talk about the trauma, now she's a very regular attender because she felt that by getting it off her chest, she felt better. So what you're saying is the problem with traumatization is if a person doesn't get information, doesn't talk about it, it could actually make them cripple, could hurt their life, could help them destroy their life, and also miss opportunities which are right in front of them.
It's a huge problem, and I think we need to talk and we need to inform people what you're dealing with. So less we get afraid and more we become creative and effective to find solutions. Even if the mind, some childhood traumas, what happens is that you don't really have a memory of what happened. You put it away. But what we know is the body keeps the score. The body always remembers.
Explain that. You said a child may have a memory of being abused or whatever, but he can't recall the memory. But guess what? You said the body?
The body remembers. The body keeps the score. What we know is that memories of trauma are very fragmented. You're like, I'm not sure it really happened. I see this image, I see the other one, but I'm not sure how was I, where was I? So this is what happens with a childhood, especially trauma in childhood. To be able to survive this, a lot of people just put it away as if it didn't happen or it was fiction. They just are able to put it in a drawer and just close it and not have access to it. But the problem is that the body remembers. And one day you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend touch you in a certain way, you go crazy and you attack them. And you don't know, what? I don't remember.
And you have this trauma, and one day you start dating somebody and they touch you.
They touch you or they say something that is a trigger and you don't know it's a trigger, and you have a completely outlandish, impulsive reaction. And like, what happened? I don't know what happened. Because the body will remember. That is the problem, and the body will suffer.
Shh. It's very serious.
Yes, it's very serious, but there's a lot that can be done. A lot.
And that's your message today.
Yes.
And the first thing is you have to be what? Informed. If you're not informed, we lose before we even start.
And you have to understand that a trauma is almost like a problem of a memory. Once you can't go back to the past and erase what happened to you, but you can reach a place that the memory that this only becomes a memory where you can learn from experience.
Okay. Let's start over again. You said trauma is like a memory. You can't erase it, but what?
No, the problem of trauma has to do with how we process memory.
Okay.
This is the center of it.
Okay.
You can't avoid all trauma. You can prevent some. You can't avoid all.
So everybody will get some trauma in their life.
Yes. If you have enough healing and the memory of the trauma is processed, it becomes just a memory like no other. You can talk about it, and most of it you can learn from it. When the memory is not processed, it's processed in a maladaptive way, you can never learn from it, and it's never the past, it's always the present. You're going to carry it with you forever.
Well, that's important because, someone said that when you work through a painful memory, when it comes back to consciousness, it's like an empty shell.
Exactly.
So what you're saying is when you work through a traumatizing memory, when it comes to consciousness, it's kind of tamed. You can learn from it, you can aim it, and you can tame it.
It's less disturbing, and sometimes it can be not disturbing at all. You can talk about a very traumatic event, be sad about it, but it doesn't have the intensity of the trauma anymore. And this is how we work with trauma. You can't undo it, right? You can't undo. You can go back to the past and not make it happen, but you can learn from it once you have the proper access, and when it just becomes a memory. You have access to it, you can talk about it, you can learn, you can write a book, you can talk to someone, you can make changes in your life. If it's a memory that is traumatic and very intense, you can do nothing about it than run from it.
Wow. So Flavia, you're saying there's certain people who had traumas in their life. Their life has stopped since that trauma. They may be breathing, they may be going to work, they may be married, but in some sense, the flourishing of their life has died.
Or to put it in another way, you can understand sometimes you can say a part of them is frozen. It's frozen. Image I use is, trauma is not only psychological trauma, there's physical trauma, right? You can have a bone that is broken. This is a trauma, right? So it's exactly the same. If you have a broken arm, a bone, and it's traumatic, but if you heal it, you're gonna maybe have a scar, but you can still use your both arms. What happened with psychological trauma when it's not healed is that what you do is you're like, nobody touches this arm, nobody approaches me, I'm gonna live my life forever now with just one arm. People will tell you, but you just have half of your ability, you're handicapped by this, but they say, it's too hurtful, don't touch it. Don't touch it, it's too hurtful. So I'm gonna live my life with part of me not being able to be used. And there's a big handicap for you, for your community, for the whole society.
Flavia, that's sad. So a person's almost like saying, I'm half living.
Half living, because part of them is inaccessible to them. They can't learn with the experience because it's too overwhelming. And the problem is that they know that if they're going to go through the healing of the arm, for example, someone will have to approach them and touch it. But it's for healing. It's not to make it worse again.
Wow, that is powerful. To think that we can become traumatized in our life, that we don't deal with it. We can sort of lose the function of a part of our whole heart, a part of our whole being, part of our whole body, as it were, and go on to a half-life. Or be a living, dead person. This is serious. We're going to take a break and be right back.